Welcome back to Suburban Betty, a lifestyle channel about all things cleaning, cosmetics, gardening and cooking. Today's video is for students, anyone who's been affected financially by COVID-19, or just anyone who's working on a tight budget. We're going to be cooking nutritious meals for one person for an entire week for under 170 Rand. So these are the following rules that I set myself when I started this challenge. 1, I wanted to see how cheaply I could eat for a week, and that included 3 meals a day. 2, I wanted to have macronutrient balance when you looked at the day as a whole, so that meant I wanted to see carbohydrates, protein and fat in each meal. And the 3rd was that I wanted to still eat vegetables at least and fruit as well if possible, because obviously we wouldn't be getting any micronutrients, or not as many micronutrients, if we excluded vegetables and fruit. A cost that I haven't included in the cost of buying the groceries is what I would consider staple items that you might have in your pantry. And those were some form of oil or fat, sugar, salt, pepper, and vinegar. So I'm assuming that everyone would have one of those sources. If not, you would have to add on to my total to see what you would get to per week. So one thing that I forgot to buy when I was at the shop was a bottle of soy sauce. So I will be including that in the total that's at the bottom of the slip. Without further ado, let's dive in. So I just want to show you the groceries that I bought. First off, we got carrots, we got mixed kale, we got a 5-pack of just general ramen noodles. We got a loaf of really nice brown bread. We got a natural peanut butter, 2 onions, a mayonnaise, chicken spice, flour that's self-raising, chicken breasts that are bone in and skin on, and a cabbage. So let's have a look at what we're going to create with all of this food. In today's video, we're going to be making the following: peanut butter toast, which I'm not going to show you because I'm sure you've seen it before, chicken dumpling soup, chicken slaw flatbreads, and chicken peanut stir fry. I'm starting off by washing the kale well to make sure that it doesn't have any sand on it. Kale can often be quite sandy, and you don't want to have a crunchy stir fry from something that is not meant to be crunchy. You'll see that I'm taking the leaves off of each of the stalks and then rolling the kale up, following which I'm doing a chiffonade chop, which basically just means I'm cutting it finely into ribbons. Please be super careful when you are cutting. I have sped this video up, so you shouldn't be trying to cut at this speed. Just take it slowly and keep your eyes on your fingers. You want to be cutting your kale nice and thinly, because otherwise it can taste quite tough in texture, but as long as you cut thinly and you give it proper cook time, it will be absolutely delicious. Next up, I'm going to start prepping the cabbage. I'm going to take off the outer leaves, and then I'm going to start to take out the sort of woody base or the stalk of the cabbage. So this is the part of the cabbage where the root comes out of the head of the cabbage, and this can be quite hard, and it's not very nice to eat in a coleslaw, for example, or to get big chunks of it in a soup. So I'm just going to remove it to make sure that we can get nice clean ribbons, and then cut off sections and thinly slice them up. Next up, we're going to prepare carrots. So I've washed these quite well, and I haven't peeled them because I just prefer the taste of carrots with the skin on. I get more of like an earthy flavor, which I really enjoy. Again, please be very careful when you cut, and keep an eye on your fingers and make sure you're keeping them far enough away from the knife. I'm cutting these carrots at an angle, so they're sort of still a round cut, but they're at an angle, and I think that just looks nicer, especially when you're eating your stir fry. now I'm going to start preparing my slaw. So I'm adding 4 large handfuls of cabbage to a bowl, and then I'm going to add seasonings, 1 tablespoon of vinegar, followed by a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then I'm going to add in some black pepper, and I'm going to follow that up with 1 large teaspoon of sugar. I'm then going to mix the bowl quite well just to make sure all of that cabbage is nicely coated in that dressing, and I'm going to set it aside. Then I'll wash 2 carrots and just take the tips off, and I'm going to grate them, and these are also going to go into the slaw. If you wanted to bulk this up a bit, you could definitely add a 3rd carrot. When that's all done, I'm going to add those carrots into that cabbage mixture and give it a really good mix just to combine all those ingredients. Then I'm going to set it aside and carry on with the next element. Next thing I want to do is prep the onions, and I'm going to start doing that by peeling them and then locating the root or the base of the onion. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't want to cut into that for slices, because it's obviously a bit hard, and I want the slices to fall apart nice and easily. So the first way I'm preparing it is just thin slices, as you can see here, and that's going to go into the coleslaw. And I'm just doing this because I don't want thick chunks of onion, especially raw onion, in my coleslaw. The next thing I'm doing is a sort of rough chop of onion, and this will be going into the soup, and it'll cook down quite nicely. And then with the last onion, which I'm still going to peel, I'm going to do thick slices, and this will be for the stir fry, and it should fall apart quite nicely in the stir fry. Next up, I want to prepare the chicken, and I'm going to do this by deboning it. So you want to identify where the ribs are and then use that as a handle, and then take a really sharp knife and start filleting against the ribs themselves. So you're going to run the knife between the breast and the ribs, trying to get as close to that level of bone as you can. And you're going to just try and work around the bone and slowly release that fillet. So you'll see there's a bone there that I'm working around, and then there's also the wishbone, which you just need to check for, and that's sort of at the base, at the top near where the wing bone would be. And you just slowly release that fillet and you keep cutting around it, and when you're finished, just double check that you have all the ligament cut off, and there you go, you've now deboned a chicken breast. Do this for all 3 of the chicken breasts, and then cut 1.5 of the breasts into cubes, having taken the skin off first, and season the other 1.5 well with the Portuguese seasoning that we bought. Next, get out a large stock pot or your largest soup pot, place a bit of oil in it and put it over a medium heat, then add your chopped onions. You just want to give those a little bit of a fry, and then you're going to add in about half of the chopped carrots that we did on the angle. So half will go in here, and then the remainder will go into your stir fry. You just want to basically give these a short saute, and then you're going to move them to the other half of the pot to make room for the chicken breasts, which we're going to pop in and brown. And it's really browning the chicken breast at this stage that's going to add quite a lot of chickeny flavor to your soup, so don't skip this step. It's really important. You want your pot to be quite hot at this point to get that brown. on the chicken, and that means that you probably need to move your veg around every couple of seconds, or every 30 or so seconds, just to make sure that it's not catching on the bottom of the pan. Now you want to add your kale in, and at this point you're going to add about half of the kale that you chopped up, and you really just want to wilt this down. So you're going to stir through all those ingredients and just keep cooking until that wilts down a bit. Unfortunately, it was at this point that my camera died, so I have not captured the next few steps, but I will run through them while you see what the final soup looked like. So this is what the soup looked like when it was finished. After the kale had finished wilting, I added about 8 glasses of boiled water, 4 handfuls of cut cabbage, 3 packets of the ramen seasoning, a teaspoon of salt, and a pinch of pepper, and I then let it cook for about 45 minutes. Now, once the soup is done, so 45 minutes later, you want to go through it and take out all of those bone sections that you put in, because obviously you're not going to want to eat big chunks of bone when you have your soup. So you just need to carefully go through the broth and the liquid and the veg a couple times just to make sure that you get all the bone sections out. And we're going to pick through those bone sections to take the meat off of them, and I'll show you that now. So now we're going to pick through those bone sections, and I'll just show you a bit of it. It can look a bit gross, but I do think it's respectful when you're eating animals not to waste any part of the animal. And I do think when you're trying to stretch out your budget, this is a clever way to cook, just to make sure you're using all the resources that you have, so it's a win-win situation. So I'm just going to go through all the bits of bone and pick off all the nice bits of chicken and reserve those, and then I'm going to add them back into that broth as the next step. Now we're going to move on to making the dumplings, and don't worry, this bowl was clean. I had just made the flatbreads in it, but I decided to move that clip to later on. So you're going to start with 2 cups of self-raising flour. After that, you're going to add in some oil, so you want about 3 tablespoons of oil. Then we're going to add some salt, and then we're going to move on to about a cup of warm water. Now, unlike the flatbread mixture that we're going to make later, this mixture needs to be more wet than a dough, and this is really important because you're going to spoon it into the soup. So just keep adding the ingredients until you reach a texture that's similar to the one you'll see now in the video. The dough should be smooth, so you don't want to over mix it, but you want to make sure that you've mixed all of the lumps out so you don't get a big lump of flour in your dumpling. Now we're going to cook the dumplings. So just spoon nice big spoonfuls into your pot on top of your soup. You want to make sure that your soup is hot enough, so it should be on a very gentle boil. You'll see that I actually turned my pot up about halfway through putting the dumplings in because I realized the temperature wasn't high enough. And this is important because if you don't have the temperature high enough, they can become quite soggy and they're not going to rise properly inside. So a good dumpling shouldn't be doughy. A good dumpling should be fluffy and it should have a nice bready texture. And it's really important for the temperature to be high enough when they go in to achieve that. Once they're all into your pot, cover them with a lid and cook them on this side for about 3 or 4 minutes. If you're cooking dumplings in a more brothy soup that doesn't have a lot of content, so it doesn't have a lot of veg or other food in it, then you can just let them drop to the bottom and cook in one go. But because this has quite a lot of food in it, the soup, the dumplings aren't going to sink to the bottom and you're going to need to turn them and then cook them on the other side for about 4 or 5 minutes. move on to the stir fry. So in your largest pan, heat some oil up over a high heat and add in your chopped up onions and the rest of your chopped up carrots. You're just going to saute these, and then similar to what we did with the soup, you're going to make some space so that you can also brown the chicken a little bit. Cook these together for a few minutes. Now we're going to start seasoning. So the first thing we add is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. We're going to do this in layers, so we'll add more when we put in our noodles. Now we're going to add in the remainder of the kale and just let it wilt down. And then we're going to add in some seasoning, so 1 teaspoon of sugar and half a tablespoon of vinegar. And then we'll add the final veg, which is about 5 handfuls of chopped cabbage. So I just quickly want to talk about bulking out this meal. If you're looking for quite big satiating meals, then I would strongly suggest that you add a bit more veg. I had quite a bit of cabbage left over and plenty of carrots. And what you could do is, before you get to the stage where you put the noodles in, you could add a couple extra handfuls of cabbage and just let it wilt down. You could even grate some carrot for a different texture and add that as well, let it cook down, and that'll just mean that you get more bang for your buck. It will also mean though that you're going to have to cook in 2 batches. So once your veggies are done, you're going to have to remove half and then combine half with, say, 2 packets of noodles and then the other half with 2 packets of noodles. But that's really no fuss if you're looking for a bigger satiating meal. What you must remember though is you're going to have to adjust the seasoning slightly. So make sure you add an extra tablespoon or so of soy sauce to your veg mix, and then make sure that you are seasoning properly when you add in the noodles. So now we're going to add in 2 packets of soaked noodles. So I've just soaked these in hot water, and we're just going to work the veg into the noodles. You'll see here that the pan is quite full, and that's why I haven't added all the veg and I haven't added all of the noodles. If you had a big wok, that would be absolutely ideal, because then you could do, say, like 4 packets of the noodles, and you could probably do all the veg at the same time. Then I'm just going to add in 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, and that's really just that layer of flavoring I was talking about for the noodles, and this is a really essential step, so please don't miss it. Next up, we're going to add peanut butter, about 2 heaped teaspoons worth. The first way that you can do it is just add it directly and let it melt in, but you will get peanut-like clusters. If you don't like that, you can add it to about 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons of water and just keep stirring until it's combined. This does take a little bit of time to combine, but if you want a more cohesive sauce, then by all means go for that. On to cooking our chicken breast for our chicken slaw flatbreads. We're just going to place the seasoned skin side down into a medium hot pan and just let those cook for about 6 or 7 minutes on that side. Then turn them around and cook them for the same amount of time on the other side, and then just leave them on a warm stove to relax, so that when you cut them, they're not super hot, and that'll help you maintain quite a juicy breast. Breast can be quite dry, and this way really works. Finally, let's make the flatbreads. So 1.5 cups of self-raising flour with half a teaspoon of salt and about 1 tablespoon of oil. And then you're slowly going to work in 120 mils of water. You shouldn't at this point add all the water in at once. You want to add the water in slowly, because you may not actually use all of the water. You just want to add water in until the dough looks like it's about to come together, but it hasn't come together completely. So you can see the stage number there. There are some clumps, but it's not a single piece of dough. And then you want to work it and just keep kneading until it all comes together. So you want all the excess flour that's in the bowl around the sides to start to basically form part of that dough ball, and then you're just going to keep kneading until you have a soft and smooth dough. So this is the perfect consistency, nice and soft, a smooth flat surface with most of the flour from the outside having been incorporated into the ball. Now you're going to wrap it and rest it for 15 minutes. Once it's rested, you're going to take it out and cut it into 4 sections and roll it out. In a preheated pan, and it must be preheated, cook each of the flatbreads for about 45 seconds on each side or until they start to bubble. Then you're going to cut up your chicken. You can see there it's really nice and tender, and this is really simple. You just want to do nice thin slices and get it ready to go into the coleslaw. Now grab the slaw that you have set aside and you want to add 4 heaped tablespoons of mayo to that slaw and work it through, as well as the chicken breast that you've just sliced up. Make sure that you give it a really good mix to combine all of those flavors, and then you're pretty much done. And this is the last dish that we are preparing. So if you've gotten to this stage, you're done. Well done. If you are working on a tight budget, I really hope that this video has helped you somewhat and given you some ideas for new dishes to make. Don't be discouraged. This season in your life won't last forever, and you can still feed yourself really well on a budget. Here is all of the final food together: the slaw flatbreads, the stir fry, the chicken soup. If you enjoyed this content, please do like and subscribe. I'm going to be creating a lot more content like this with budget meals and just meals in general, and I'd love to have you be part of my channel. Otherwise, have a fantastic week and stay healthy and stay safe.